Hey, everybody. My name is Jared Budlong. I am an independent candidate for governor here in Alabama, and I want to welcome Robert. Robert ran across my TikTok live, skipped past it, which is respectable, and then went and looked at the rest of my content so I could kind of figure out where I'm at. And then immediately, I assume somewhere around there, pretty quickly, filled out a request to meet with me, which is on the website. And so now we're here. And Robert, if you want to give as much info as you are comfortable giving for everybody to hear, that is completely up to you how much you give.
Hello, my name is Robert Ranck. I live in Gadsden, Alabama. Uh, I saw Jared on TikTok, like you said, and I just had a few questions for him. I like to say that I'm a conservative and I choose the Alabama views, as Jared would say. But I also feel like there are things that need to change in our state, and I'm hopefully Jared's the right man to do it.
Yeah, appreciate it. I'm going to do one thing. It's doing the thing that it was doing before we went live. I'm not going to ask you to refresh. I'm just going to pop you out of the live and then put you back in and see if it helps.
Okay.
The sound is glitching again. So hold on one second. All right, we're going to try that again. Give me a quick sentence. Say it again.
Did it go?
Yeah, it didn't.
No.
Will you do that thing one more time and just refresh and jump back in? Okay, cool. Thank you. I appreciate it. Curtis Poole on TikTok. Where are you? Well, we're waiting on Robert to get back. Where are you running for governor? And TikTok, please, if you have questions, I'm here for a conversation with Robert. But if you will put in some Q&A questions, it should be on. Put them in the Q&A, and if they are relevant and we have time to bring them up, I'll be happy to answer some questions. We're going to cut this off at about 6:35, 6:30, 6:40, somewhere around there, about half an hour. Want to be respectful of Robert's time, but also, I've got dinner that's getting ready downstairs, so. We're not going to do a 3-hour stream like we've done unintentionally in the past. So, Robert, you mentioned that you are a conservative, but also, want to see some change for Alabama. And you had questions for me specifically as a candidate running for governor, and one
Yes.
that says he wants to change the state and make it, at least in my words, make it better for everybody. What do you want to talk about first?
So, I'd like to talk about your prison system ideas.
Yeah.
Um, does that incorporate down into jail as well?
Yeah, so it actually is it's more than just the system, and that's what's really hard to get across to people in like little 60-second sound bites, but it's more than just the physical places we put people, and even really
Yeah.
the laws. It's more about changing how we have to look at justice. So like everybody, not for some reason, it's intentional because we've been told to think this way for a very long time. But when somebody commits a crime, we have this idea that punishing them will solve that as a problem, right? Like it will prevent them from doing it again. It will prevent other people from doing that crime as a deterrent or something along those. And you know, I, my problem with it is that it hasn't worked, and we've tried it
No.
for hundreds of years, and it literally, as a country and a state, we are doing nothing but putting more people in prison.
Have you
And
have you looked up Finland's prison system?
are they more of like a restorative justice thing where they try and deal
Yeah.
with? Yeah,
They,
so that one
they
specifically, no, but I'm looking into restorative justice as an example.
restorative justice, like sending criminals or people that have committed crimes, low level crimes that that are mainly poverty based, like robberies, stuff like that,
Yeah,
and putting them into like occupational schooling and stuff like that. You
yeah,
know, therapy, instead of treating them like an animal and just throwing them in a cage,
yeah,
because that is failing 100%. I mean, even Finland has, lifelong prison inmates that are becoming IT guys, uh, and they're
yeah,
doing their work from prison, and they
right.
still hold all the same rights that a Finland citizen would hold: their right to vote, their right to, almost everything, except for they just can't leave jail.
Right. And
You know,
so, and I don't know if it was Finland specifically. Uh, Salty, that is a warning. There's very few things that I don't allow on my platform, and threatening lives is one of them. Overt racism is one of them, and then just disrespecting boundaries. So if I'm setting a boundary, I need you to respect that. Uh,
Absolutely.
and yeah, so no, you know what you've said. Chill out. Uh,
Wait, I said something?
no, 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 no. Salty dog on on Twitter, not
Oh, oh,
on
okay,
TikTok,
okay.
not you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whew.
Sorry.
I'm like,
No, not no. Robert, you're good. Everything you said so far is great. Like let's go grab a beer and hang out.
yeah,
So I was gonna say something. I don't know if it was Finland, but there somebody pointed out that from their country, it was Finland or not, or somewhere that's doing restorative justice, and they heard that in the U.S., if you try to escape jail, you get additional punishment, and
yeah,
they were like, wait, like is that not the natural human inclination? Like if somebody's keeping you in a box, like you naturally are going to want to get out of that situation. Like you're blaming them for like the inherent thing that someone would want to do in that situation.
right.
That's weird.
Even
Like
animals do the same thing.
yeah,
You know,
yep,
animals do the same thing. They try to escape their cages. I have to run down the street for my dog all the time because it doesn't
yeah,
like hanging out in the backyard. You know,
right, yeah.
so
So,
it's.
yeah,
I think that's normal behavior.
yeah, 100%. And that's what I believe normal people would agree.
Yeah,
So uh, the problem that we have, and it's something that I've started pointing out to everybody I talk to, is that our state and all of its laws and how things are handled. Sorry if you can hear the kids.
no,
You probably can't, but TikTok probably can because it's a different microphone. And all the laws are based on uh, most of it's in the Constitution, right? Because our Constitution was written in 1901.
yeah,
And we are still using that same Constitution with 977 ish amendments. And if you've watched any of my lives recently, you've heard me talk about it because it's just gobsmacked. I just I I still am trying to reconcile my cognitive dissonance for how I was raised and what is true. So, and I'm not going to read the entire thing right now. We can look at that later, and I'll send you a link if you want to. But because I have your email, but the Constitution was written in 1901, and the Constitutional Convention, the meetings preceding the actual writing, the writers, the people who are in the room, all the lawmakers, essentially on day two. After day one was the roll call, so they're like, "Hey, everybody's here, cool, great. Show up tomorrow, and we'll start doing this thing." They open it up in like the first 5 minutes, and it's what are we here to do, and it's instill white supremacy into law, like
yeah.
that literally, and not like verbatim and like reading between the lines. It's just that's what was said. And knowing that, and the fact that our state has continually added more and more things into the Constitution to where other parties don't have as much control, makes doing anything very hard. So like I'm aware of how uphill of a battle this is, but that's
Yeah,
kind of the point, is like no one's saying anything, and I don't even know that even some of the current lawmakers understand what they're fighting against, because we've voted recently for uh, rewriting the Constitution, but not rephrasing, not rewriting, but rewording and rephrasing the Constitution to remove racist language. And I had this realization
that's sad that
yesterday.
that has to be a thing.
Well, I had this realization yesterday that that actually might be bad, and like that sounds backwards. But if the whole thing was written to instill white supremacy, and then we start removing the language that in the document points to that history, like
Hmm.
less people are aware of the undertones.
Yeah,
Like it actually is potentially more problematic once we remove some of
it's
that
better to
language.
have racism slap you in the face than it is to have it just itch at you.
Yeah, I can't speak to that specifically, but I've heard
I
that
would
from
think
people who
so.
get affected by it. So like
Yeah,
I will say that I have interacted with some creators who have said the same thing. Like they've lived up north, they've lived down south, and they're like, I prefer it down here because you just know where you stand with people,
exactly.
versus the friendly neighbor who actually just wishes you didn't exist.
Yeah,
So that's it's frustrating that our entire entire way that we do things is based on some racist people in the early 1900s and the laws that they wrote. So
Right. No,
that
I agree with you 100%.
yeah, so
And
that's going to influence the whole justice decision, because it's not just like, oh, let's reform some prisons and give them better healthcare and some education programs. It's like, all right, but like, we're putting a lot of people in prison, and that has to change. Like, we have to figure out how to stop that part.
well, I think that also comes down to adjusting some of the laws,
Yep. Some
like
of the laws, some of
why
the
can I
poverty rates. There's all kinds of reasons, or all kinds of ways we could help reduce that for sure.
why can I go down to the gas station? I can buy a vape pen that has THC 8 in it, but I can't buy some weed from the dude down the street that has THC 9 in it.
Because there's a slight chemical compound.
I know it's a slight chemical difference, but it's still like you might as well legalize it. And
Yeah.
they won't legalize it because it plays into that race card as well.
Yep.
Like, okay,
Oh, no.
so
Yeah,
the
100%.
white people can still get their high, right, from these vape pens that they can buy for $30 at the gas station, while the black dude down the street's still only going to pay $5 for a gram. And then we're going to bust him with his gram and send him to jail, and put him, like you said, in these pretty much internment camps where they're freaking, well, they're worse than internment camps.
We can call them plantations. It's
yeah,
fine.
They're plantations, and they're running.
They're not necessarily
right
growing
after.
cotton. Depends on which one. They probably are in some of them. I haven't looked into all of the things that we're doing. They do in Louisiana. I don't know if they do in Alabama, but they still grow plants and stuff too. And it's like,
I'm like, I don't. You caught my county on 60 Days In, like Etowah County.
Oh yeah.
That was on 60 Days In, and I felt so embarrassed.
Yeah.
I was like, this is the
did
county.
You comment about that? Somebody commented about that recently on one of my videos. They were like, yeah, Etowah County, 60 Days In. You should check it out. And I was like, will do. And if it wasn't you, then you're the second person.
It's so embarrassing, though. Like, this is the county I live in, where, drugs run rampant inside the jail. The sheriff has no freaking clue what he's doing, and the jail is majority black.
Is it that he? Oh well.
And he doesn't have the funding to make anything change either.
Gotcha.
Gotcha. Like, Etowah County is the smallest county in Alabama, and it just shouldn't be this bad. It shouldn't.
I agree.
Yeah.
Man, like, where you're born should not mean that you end up more, or you're more likely to end up incarcerated. Like, that shouldn't be the case, because that literally points to like that. It points to an institutional problem.
What was it? 2014 Etowah County Jail was rated at the 6th worst jail in the United States. Like, that breaks my heart. I wasn't born in Etowah County. I didn't grow up in Alabama. Like I said earlier before we went live, I've lived in 22 states and been to 48 of them.
What are the two you haven't been to, just out of curiosity?
Louisiana and Maine.
Well, we're not far from Louisiana, man. Like, you could change that real quick.
It's on the bucket list, I promise.
Yeah. Maine, it's a little bit harder to get that direction depending on funding. But like Louisiana, you could make that work. And depending on if gambling's in your wheelhouse, then you could fund it.
Yeah. I'm definitely not a gambler. I try to stay away from substances and gambling. I don't drink alcohol. That's a weird thing here in Alabama too, because Alabama is full of raging alcoholics. It's so weird.
Nah, I wouldn't say it's weird. Like, again, I'm not a psychologist, but like I know there's enough to where it's not all physical. There's a physical dependency in some of it, but it's not all physical. And we have the worst healthcare, not the worst. It depends on the survey you look at, but we have one of the worst healthcare systems. We have one of the worst education systems, and we are a very poor state. Like, it is understandable why people would go to substances to try to alleviate that.
I mean, and it becomes a cultural thing, and it's passed down from generation to generation here in Alabama, which is so weird because I've been to a lot of places where alcohol was a thing, but not a thing. Like
Right.
I li- my majority of my childhood, I grew up in Utah, and
Okay.
they had a lower alcohol percentage for their beers. So we always complained and said, "Uh, you not only do you have sloppy drunks, but you have fat sloppy drunks because they had to drink double the beer." You
Right.
know,
More calories to get there.
yeah, you know. Uh,
Man.
and that's another thing is I grew up a majority in Utah, and that paid a lot on my conservative side of things. Um, but I hated it as well because I lived in the shadow of a church that I did not like, and living in the shadow of a church is horrible as well. And it's weird because I chose Alabama, so now I live in the shadow of Christianity, uh, and everything is guided by that church. And
Right.
Alabama has a real hard time of separating church and state as well.
Yeah, and like I don't typically bring up things about other candidates on my end. I usually let people bring them up outside of the prison system with the COVID relief funds, which is the reason I'm running, which is why I bring it up. Is like in 2021 in October, the state as a whole decided to spend 20 not spend, sorry, we haven't spent it yet. We decided to allocate 20% of our COVID relief funds. So the federal relief that came down, we allocated 20%, which is $400 million for new prisons. And
Yeah, that's
that money
ridiculous.
just never got spent. It is currently a part of the 1.2-ish million dollar system they're trying to build and sell bonds to cover the rest of that money
Yeah,
that people are not as interested in buying as the state had hoped, which I'm happy to see, to be honest.
that's good.
uh, but the other, what I was going to say is you mentioned religion and like kind of running the state,
Yeah,
whether literally or just the majority of people follow a specific uh, at least a couple different specific branches of a religion. And one thing that's been disheartening to see, not just from me, but from other people who typically vote, and that's one of our candidates is both pro-life and like the government should be run like we're Christians, and
yeah.
it's concerning. Like I just that's not and it's frustrating. If you don't know who it
That's
is, you can go
another
look it
thing
up.
though,
But
is
both
like
both candidates are both pro life. Both of the main party candidates are pro life candidates, and
you
like
can
that.
say you can say I'm pro life, but I'm not pro Christian or pro religious, and having that stand out from you know your running right, but in the back of like Kay Ively's head,
Yeah,
she
like
goes to church every Sunday.
right. Not likely.
Or
I don't follow her around, but it's likely.
it's likely,
Yeah.
because
But
she knows that
I'm
if
not
she
even
goes
talking
to
about Ivy at
church,
this point. This
she's
is the
probably
other candidate.
she's probably gonna. I don't know anything about the other candidate. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know nothing about him.
Uh,
Um,
well, like you know, on her campaign site, everything sounds pretty familiar. Like
yeah,
it actually sounds very similar to even K Ivy's. Like the platform sounds very similar, and it actually the talking points aren't any different than mine as the titles. Like they want to do something about healthcare, they want to do something about education, they want to do something about the justice system. It's like, yeah, well, yeah, because that's literally what's wrong with the state. Like, not it's
yeah,
not the only thing, but like those are the three things. Like every candidate running for governor right now agrees that it's healthcare, education, and justice. The problem is, like, I want to give everybody access to healthcare, however possible. Like, we're gonna have to deal with that at some point. But like,
yeah.
expanding Medicaid's a good start, where we can just, hey, we can accept the funding that's available to us and get 43% of the people who aren't insured access to some type of healthcare. Like, that's a good start.
Like
It's not where I would like to
Medicaid.
stop. Yeah, we could expand Medicaid and take the federal funding that's there, and we only have to pay like 10% of it. They pay 90%. It's like, yes, like I know that shouldn't be a question. So that education, I haven't seen anybody really talk about just overhauling the actual funding of education. They all talk about wanting to do different things, but the way we fund our schools is uh, across a national ideology. Like the everybody who looks at it that isn't in Alabama and like three other states or so, they're all like, why do you fund your schools that way? Like it just doesn't We use a
Yeah.
weird convoluted algorithm to like figure out the numerical point value for the student to admin to teacher to like other staff ratio. Like there's this weird, they're like, all right, cool, each student is worth this many points and each admin is worth this many points, and then they like do some weird math and they're like, cool, your school needs 500 units or whatever the number is. I
Yeah.
don't care, we just need to get rid of it. But they don't do, hey, each average student needs $80 a day or whatever. That's a large amount. I'm throwing out random numbers, don't quote me on
Yeah.
those.
No worries.
But each student needs $80 a day, and then if you're special needs, and you're in this program, you might need 100. And if you have these needs, you might be 110, and then shift it for maybe local poverty rates. So it's like, hey, there's more poverty in your area, so maybe they need more school funding for lunch programs. So like it goes up from there. And we do something similar with the program we use, but we don't just say students need X. We do this weird math thing that even people who've looked at it go, like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like even with the algorithm that we're using, and I'm using that term generically, if it's not the right word, somebody, you can correct me, but it's from a layperson, it's the right word. So it's this math problem that even if you use it, we're not funding our schools equitably. Like if you use it correctly, we're still not funding things correctly or equitably. So
See, and that's
uh,
weird too. I look at that and I'm like, you got the metropolitan of Gadsden, right? Which
yeah,
accounts of a few or a bunch of little towns. It's almost the entire county, right? The
okay,
metropolitan of Gadsden. We got one town called Hoax Bluff, right? They're rated a
okay,
10. Their K through 12 is rated a 10 on the scale, right? And then you got Gadsden K through 10, who's rated a 3 on the scale. And it's like Gadsden has more students, right? They have more students. Like they should be higher on the rating scale, you know? Like, but they're both public education systems.
yep,
And why, like, I understand, like, oh, because the teachers get better, interaction with their students because they don't have so many students. I understand that,
yeah.
right? But at
And
the
that, like,
same
this isn't
time,
it's not an attack on the teachers at all. Like
no, it's not,
there
you
are
know?
problematic employees in every industry. So like, sure, there are bad teachers, that happens, but there are bad actors in every industry. So not that, but when you have such huge disparities, when all other things should be equal. So I looked at the report cards that the state puts out for its own school boards, right? So they're like, hey, you can look at this school board, this school board, this school board, and you compare three at a time, and you get to pick uh, either individual schools or just the whole county or the whole board, depending on how that's broken down, depends where you're at. But I basically, what I did, because I wanted to say, all right, let's look at three different school systems that are in roughly equal income, at least the median, I think it was the median income. They're all about the same. So they're about the $50,000 median income. And I was like,
Yeah.
all right, cool. So we have Baldwin County, we have Shelby County, and I think it was, oh man, I don't remember what county it was. In the middle of the state. It was kind of surprising on where it was based on the median income, but it was somewhere in the middle. I don't remember where it was. It's somewhere in the middle. So you had Shelby, something in the middle, and then you had Baldwin County, and they all hit about $50,000 average income. And Shelby and whatever the middle one was, trying to go off memory now. I really should have looked this up before we got on our call. But two of the three were like, yeah, B rating, like just dead on. And then the other one was like a D. And
Yeah.
there was no, like, all the teachers had roughly the same education. They had the right ratios. Like all of that stuff was very similar on the stats. Uh, it just, there was certain, that one other group, or the other school district, had very big disparities on income. So the average was in the 50s, but there were some very poor areas and there were some very rich areas. And
Yeah.
that's the only thing I could find, at least, in the cursory research. And that's why,
Like,
that's why I need a
they
team
kind
to
of
help
seem
out.
like it
Yeah, it was
would,
the only thing I could find that was like,
it
hey,
would
there's
change their
some poor
numbers.
areas. Yep.
It's
Yeah, there's
poor
some very poor
areas.
people. And
It's
they've
real weird
drastically
too,
reduced the
'cause,
numbers.
I used to live in Jefferson County, right? And down in Phoenix City, Alabama.
Hmm.
and which is on the Columbus, Georgia border.
Yeah.
Um, and I lived there, and I had a friend. His kids went to Smith Station, K through 12,
Okay.
right? And they had amazing programs for their students, right? When I lived down there, and then I looked them up recently, about 2 months ago, and they have completely fallen off track. And I was like, what happened there? Like you guys were a 10 school, and now you're a two school, and that doesn't even make sense, you
Right.
know. And I looked at it even more, and turns out like last year they had a flood that almost flooded the entire or it flooded the entire school, and that dipped right into their budget. And they actually
Yeah.
lost teachers over it and stuff, because they were like, well, we can't pay you as much because we have to
Yeah.
fix the school.
Right.
And so like I understand situations like that where things fall off because of things that are way out of people's hands, but if it's still in your hands, like,
Out of their hands, yes. Out of the state's hands would be a different question.
exactly,
But
yeah.
like that's part of the problem is the way we fund our schools
This
is
I feel
is
like the
not.
state failed that school.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
that
yeah,
school was doing great, and then the state failed them. You
yeah,
know?
yeah. It the crazy part is like the way we fund our schools is convoluted also. Like not just the math on who gets what money, but where that money comes from is convoluted and
Yeah,
confusing also. A lot of it is when I say a lot of it, sorry, a portion of it comes from like property taxes and local city taxes, right? So if
okay,
we if we take a school district that is in a historically poor area, they automatically just get less money, and that's not how it should happen. But that's how it ends up happening. And what I mean by should is even the math that we use is supposed to account for some of that, but when people look at it and run the numbers again, there was an Auburn professor in 2016 who wrote an entire paper about it. Unfortunately, she passed like a year later, and I can't find anybody else who's done something similar, which is super frustrating. So I really liked the bits of the article that I could follow because it was a professor writing an article. Uh, but they took the existing math problem that we're supposed to be using and kind of like reran the numbers to like, hey, if we wanted to actually equitably, do the schools, it would happen, but it isn't how it in real life turns out. And then they gave some other alternative. They didn't give the equations, but they gave alternative ways of funding schools that other states and other places use that would have helped more equitably give out funding. So
yeah.
it's something we're looking at for sure.
That's another
I
thing I offer to you. Yet again, gonna bring up
Yeah.
Finland. You should look up Finland schooling, right? But that's a national thing. It's not
Yeah,
something that
it's tough
you got Big
with
Brother looking
well,
over your shoulder
yeah,
all the
it's
time.
tough when the way money works. As a state, we literally have to tax for things, so like that's something we'll have to deal with.
Yeah,
On a federal level, that's not quite how it works. I'm not an economist, but I listen to enough of them to know it's a little easier for them to give money than the state because we have to find a way to get the money. On the federal level, they can give it out as long as they have people who can work for it. So
yeah. And
uh,
it's funny too, because Finland, they did away with like privatized schooling, right?
yeah,
So the rich kids have to go to school with the poor kids. Uh, it is
that's
illegal to have a private school.
that is something that there are a lot of people pushing for right now. So like if nobody's aware, like the school voucher program that people are looking at and like man, I can't remember what people are calling it. It's I think it's school vouchers, but it's basically you get a credit and it's like, hey, let's give you the option, right? Like if you don't want to go to that school, like you get $3,000 a year to pick your school and you can spend it wherever you want. And it's like, yeah, but if you're already poor and the school is closer to you and you can't afford to drive your kid there because they
Yeah,
have to take the bus, you literally don't have a choice. But like the people who are more well off can like they can spend that extra time and money that they have extra resources for to send their kid to a different school, and then we end up essentially defunding public schools vicariously by letting people choose their own school. But it's not
I have
everybody
a,
who can
I
choose.
have a cousin that did that with their kids. They sent
Yeah.
them to a charter school. They got a
Yep.
grant to send their kids to charter school, and yeah,
There's big concerns about whether or not that actually will literally just completely destroy and defund the public schooling system.
I believe that.
There's
you
some big
know. And
concerns they have.
I honestly think that public schooling is a way to indoctrinate people into becoming just workers.
Uh,
Uh,
it can be. Yeah.
yeah,
I don't fully disagree. And I don't, and
especially in
again,
the
it's not the teachers. Like I want to make sure
yeah.
that's clear. Like I don't think the
No,
teachers are doing it intentionally. But
I
my
would
example
never.
that I give people is homework. It's
I
like,
would never come after a teacher unless they're
no,
trying to teach, um, you know, like transgender stuff, and
oh,
that's something I
you
feel like should be
you
left at
wanted
home.
you wanted to avoid that subject, so we're
I
gonna
know,
we're
I
gonna
know.
we're gonna leave that
I'm
one
trying
alone.
to
I'm
avoid it,
gonna respect that boundary.
but I feel like
Uh,
there's some things that teachers shouldn't teach, and
well, I
that's
mean,
one of those things.
see, uh, the problem is, as soon as we start saying they shouldn't teach about certain the way gender is expressed, then you should not be teaching any gender at that point, because you're teaching some but not all, and like that's not the way that should work. So like we can move forward because we only have a few minutes left. Now you had a
Yeah,
couple other topics, and like I've
and you
talked
got
about in the
dinner to
past.
eat.
If somebody else wants to have that conversation, I would love to keep talking about that. As a cisgendered heterosexual man, like it's weird for me to bring up, but sometimes people listen to the stereotypical person versus someone who does not meet
Yeah.
the norms for their society.
So,
Anyway, you had a
so
couple of topics, and I can go a little bit over. I said 6:35 earlier. I can
yeah.
go about 10 minutes maybe, and then
Um,
we'll go from there.
I don't know if this is something that if you became governor, you can have an effect on, but local taxes, right? Um, my
I would
what?
go ahead. I said I wish. Go ahead.
My metropolitan of Gadsden charges a local tax on workers, right? That
Okay.
they get taxed just to work, right? And I feel like that um, drives people to not work in a way because they're
Okay.
like, well, crap, I have to pay taxes just to work. I have to pay taxes everywhere. Why do I have to pay taxes to work? And I understand it plays in part with income tax as well, but
Yeah.
still, like,
I was gonna say, is it an income tax or like
is
what?
it? Yeah, it's like no, it's not even an income tax. It's straight across the board. If you make this much money, you'll pay this much money, um, and it's bracketed, right? So if you're only making, 25,000 a year, you're not going to pay anything, right?
Right.
But if you're making above that, then you're going to pay like $10 each paycheck, you know?
Okay. And that because I'm not familiar with that one specifically, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of tax code.
Come here.
Uh, do you know if that does that go to the city or does it go to the county? Do you know where it goes?
I'm not entirely sure where
Yeah.
it goes
Okay.
to the city.
Okay.
It goes to the city.
Yeah.
Because it's not the
So
entire county that does that. It goes to the city. I'll be there in a minute. Yeah.
somebody brought up something in the chat, and I'll bring it up because it's not. It's on point for what we're talking about is food taxes, and like I've got to figure out where that's written, because the problem with our state, I mentioned it very early in the show, is a lot of things are written into the Constitution, and
Yeah.
like a lot of our tax code is in the Constitution. Like there's actually stuff about certain public offices and how much they can make that's written into the Constitution. So like if we wanted to adjust certain salaries, we have to get the people who make the laws and pass the bills to agree to change stuff. And it's super tough to do some of those things. But if I could, yeah. So food, housing, water, like the things that people need to live, should not be held back from people, in my opinion, because they're poor. Like that just as a fellow human being, it feels wrong to tell somebody, hey, you were born into a crappy situation and you just don't get the food that would help you live. That
Yeah.
sucks for you. And like that, just people don't like to take that to its logical conclusion, but we have to talk about it. Like we are putting money over people's lives every day, and it's really frustrating.
That
And
is frustrating.
I don't have a solution. So like I'm not saying, I'm not saying I have the solution currently. I'm not even saying that I as a governor could. But if you want to know where I'm at, when I use the hashtag people over profits, I literally, like, that's something I think about when making any kind of decision.
Yeah.
When we're talking, as an example, quickly, people bring up the lottery, and I don't know if it's been in the Q&A today or not. It usually ends up there. Uh, no. So we talked about education and helping with poverty. Minimum wage would be great, but our state sucks. So I would try, but that again, Constitution. I'm pretty sure it's in the Constitution. I know the legislature passed a law a couple years ago to prevent city and counties from raising their own minimum wage. Literally, you can't if you want to, as a state, as a city or a county, you can't. You have to let the state do it, and we don't have a minimum wage. That's we rely on the federal. So,
Yeah,
so we were talking about,
there's nowhere close to living.
yeah, no, nowhere near. I got slightly distracted with the Q&A. What was it? Oh, the lottery. And that's one that comes up a lot. And it just, I can't remember if it was in your questions or not. Did you
No,
mention? No, okay, it was
no.
somebody else. So
I
for the
mean, I
record,
think,
I'm not a huge fan, only because it predominantly affects poor people already. And we're trying to
yeah,
say we're going to put a lottery in place to fund education because there's communities that don't have enough money to fund their schooling. But it's like we're not actually helping them. We're just taking it out of their pocket, giving some to some other people also, and then putting it back into their education system. And it's just it's broken. It's
yeah,
a bad way to look at it. I haven't seen anybody propose anything that would solve that my issue there. If somebody has a solution, I bring it up because people want to talk about it, and I'm like, if you have a solution for a lottery that does not disproportionately affect poor people, let's talk. But otherwise,
pick
my
more
my
winners.
my answer is no. Like let's tax marijuana first, and then like figure out if we need more funding.
I
like
agree with that one right there.
like
Tax marijuana. Yeah,
let's decriminalize it and then tax
because I'm not
marijuana
gonna
and then see
lie,
if we need more.
Alabama's a great place for agriculture, and marijuana would be a great place to grow.
Yeah,
I'm not even talking about smokable marijuana, but even the hemp industry,
yeah.
making
Something to make
clothes,
textiles with. Yep.
making textiles, that
Yeah.
that would be a great place to start for Alabama to bring in revenue.
Yeah.
Amazing place. Um, and that was part of the industry. I did bring up industry, and that's something that I would like to see brought back. We just recently lost a Goodyear factory here in Gadsden, and
Gotcha.
it put so many people out of business, or like
Out of
it's
work.
it's killing our economy in
Yeah.
our metropolitan. It's literally killing our economy. We can slowly see it dying. People aren't going out to eat as much, and I think that's nationwide almost. You know, and,
There is a huge problem right now with people not making enough. I'll say it that
yeah,
way.
yeah,
Unemployment looks down, but that number's potentially skewed because it involves people who are applying for unemployment too. So,
yeah.
uh,
I'm unemployed, but I've never applied for unemployment.
right,
Right.
right.
You know, and that's okay with me.
Yeah. Um, I wish you didn't have to be. We talked about it off air, but like, I wish you
Yeah.
didn't have to be.
Yeah. Because by trade, I'm a mechanic and I love turning wrenches. But unfortunately, I physically can't do it.
Yeah. I,
Yeah.
uh, I love that you get to do what you get to do now, because
Yeah.
that would be nice, but it sucks that you have to.
Yeah. I'm actually thinking about starting an at home business with glass blowing. Um,
Oh, that's
I'm,
cool.
pretty,
I actually met
I'm,
a
I'm pretty good at that too.
there was a there was an event down here in Mobile in late March and met some glass blowers, and their I think it's a TikTok account. They found me afterwards, and I think the TikTok name is like Glass Hole. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I like it. I
That
like
is
it.
pretty good.
That's a
Yeah.
fantastic username. Like, well done. It was a good one.
I'm
Well,
like, because I have no
we
problem like standing there all
yeah,
day, right? It's the actual like pulling of wrenches and lifting
gotcha,
my head up real high to look up underneath cars that I can't do, you know.
gotcha. Yeah.
Uh, but glass
Well,
blowing, I'm just sitting there,
yeah, you're sitting straight, and as long as you got
no
lung power and
problem.
you've got some dexterity with your hands and somebody to
Yeah,
help you
that's it.
lift it, because that glass gets heavy from what I understand, depending on
Yeah,
what
depending on
size
which one
piece you're
you're on.
making.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I need to wrap it up in a couple minutes. Do you have anything else you want to bring up as a final talking point?
Hey, if there's anything that we missed that I put on just my little thing that
Yeah,
I
let me
sent you, I would
let me
love to
forward it.
see some TikTok videos about that stuff
Yeah, let
from
me.
you.
I'm just going to read off what we're looking at. So, local workers tax. You talked about minimum
Yeah.
wage. So minimum wage. How high would I shoot for? Like literally, if I could, it would be based on the cost of living for your at the very largest county. So it would take your
Okay.
county, the average cost it takes to live there, and then
Yeah.
base the minimum wage off that. And that way, it is an ever evolving and changing and fluctuating minimum wage, which it's always going to go up because of inflation and everything else. So it's not going to go down. But the average cost of living, it may be over a certain trend period, but it wouldn't be, since 2009. Like we're not gonna we're not gonna wait that long to
Now,
adjust it.
is there certain industries that you would have exempt from that?
No, so it would be a minimum. It would just like no matter what
Okay.
industry, like this is the
I'm
minimum
like,
that you
because
can base it on.
I know like Waffle House, they don't, you know.
Uh, if you can get tips, you can make less. So that's 213 an hour. If it's the same from what I remember,
So do you?
essentially. But the crazy part is, not all people. I didn't know this when I was working in that industry. I worked in restaurants when I first got out of, or actually when I was in high school. And what I didn't know at the time was you only get paid that little if you don't make enough tips to make minimum wage. Which
Yeah.
whatever, it's not a huge difference, but
I
in
was gonna say
theory
there'd be a
they have to pay
compensation
you.
there
Yeah, in
if
theory, they have to pay you minimum wage if you don't earn enough uh, with your tips, your what's the your gratuity? There we go, the
yeah.
proper word for it.
I was about to
Uh,
say just compensate for what you didn't make off
yeah,
of your tips.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I haven't looked at the way that's actually written, but I would hope that if we increased the minimum wage to a point where it would help people live, then even those industries, if we didn't change that law, they would still benefit from that minimum wage increase because of the way it's written. It would take some
Yeah.
education because you have to fight for that because your employer's not going to. I'm not gonna say all of them. The ones I worked for, they were bigger companies, so they weren't going to tell you about that. They weren't going to tell you that. They were going.
Yeah.
Why would they do that?
Right.
That's more money in their pocket. So anyway,
We
that's
start at
that.
$50 an hour.
Uh, you mentioned school shootings, and like I've talked about in the past, I would love to have you come back on at some point to talk about that since you've got experience in the military,
Yeah.
and they have a different perspective on how guns should be handled, stored, taken care of. There's a whole nother perspective from what I understand on how that works,
Oh
and
yeah, and I
I I think that needs to be a discussion that people have,
yeah,
um, and that's that it's
because
something I don't have experience with.
I don't believe that gun control is going to be the way to fix that issue.
Yeah,
In a way, in a way.
well, not by itself because predominantly there is a certain demographic that's doing that, and
Yeah.
guns are not the guns are not the only part of that equation. I'm
Yeah.
not saying they're the problem, but you can't do that. You can't do those crimes without those. But
Yeah.
also,
It's a mental
if
health issue.
well, I wouldn't say mental health because we have mental health issues in a lot of different demographics, and only generally one type of person is the one who's committing those domestic terrorist events. So,
Yeah.
I don't want to point at mental health not as a blanket statement.
No, I would.
There's
Yeah.
a bigger issue. So anyway, so we can talk about that another day because I would love to have some type of way to express that to people because I don't have a solution, and I also don't think fixing it at a state level is the right way to do it because we have borders. Like we have
Yeah.
we have other states, and if they don't fix it, then people can just come here and do the same thing, and that's not uncommon for that stuff to happen. So
Yeah. I would
uh
love to maintain our correspondence though,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
via email
Um,
or whatever, you know.
so we actually have regular. I'm going to wrap it up with this then. So you've got a couple other things, and I'll see if I can make some videos of stuff that I'm confident in. I'll say that
Okay.
the Second Amendment piece. I literally want to talk to other people. I don't have
Yeah.
that. That's not something that I am well versed in. That would be like me giving people law advice. Like it's not my thing. So
Yeah.
uh, I'll wrap it up this way. Every week, my campaign has public meetings similar to this. We do them through Google Meet technically, but I rebroadcast them through the same software technically to all the platforms. TikTok, I do go live when those happen. I engage with you a lot less, even than today, typically, unless it's the policy meeting. That's the one where I really want some other people's insight. So that's Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. And everybody's welcome to attend those. So, Robert, if you want to come to those and engage with us talking about healthcare, education, and the prison system, it's a public meeting that's streamed, but also literally the Google Meeting link is on the website with the event. So you can literally just
Okay.
join the meeting with us. If you want to volunteer, that's when you start taking on actual tasks. But if anybody wants to have input into some of those policies, as long as long as your end goal is improving the lives of all of our residents here, then you are welcome to provide input. I'm not taking people out of the conversation as long as the end goal is the same, because that's how this should work. I don't I don't care what you're registered as long as you're here to help people, then let's do it. Uh, I don't I don't know anybody else in this at the state level who's doing that. I got this idea from somebody else, and
Yeah.
I thoroughly respect it. I just don't see anybody else doing it, so we're going to keep doing it here. And then on Saturdays we have our campaign strategy at 9 a.m. and then 10 o'clock is our field organizing, so boots on the ground stuff. So if anybody wants to join those, you're welcome to. The actual meeting links are on the website. If you go on social media, you can engage through comments, but it's they're open to everybody, and we're
Do
trying to
you
be as
have do you have campaign court or like coordinators for counties you don't live in so that they
uh,
can reach out
yeah. So
into areas that you're not predominantly known in?
we are always accepting new volunteers, and the answer to that is not yet, because
Okay.
we actually just reorganized. We did a reorg in the 1st of June, and then I was kind of preoccupied for 2 weeks with some summer activities that I had signed up for well before I decided to campaign. So I had about a week and a half or 2 weeks where I wasn't able to do anything right after the reorg was required. I'll say that. And so we're in the middle of trying to get volunteers onboarded and everything else. And if you filled out a volunteer app, we're getting to you, I promise. But we are a small team still, and we are trying to build it up. So
Sounds good.
but the answer is yes, we would love more. And the volunteer piece, it's however much time you have. So if, for instance, if you wanted to help up in the Gadsden area and you're like, hey, even though I am a stay at home dad, I only have an hour a week. Cool. Like that's fine. Like as long as you're being honest with me and saying, hey, I only have an hour, that's
Yeah.
cool. The only thing I don't want people to do is say, yeah, I can do like 12 hours a week. Like, and then they're like, nah, I can really only do like 2. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
let's adjust that in the system we're using, because like if I think you have 12, then I would be getting a lot more stuff done, and I would be giving it to other people.
Yeah.
So let's just if you're gonna help at school, I'll take an hour, I'll take 12, but just please be honest about it. That's all I'm looking for. I know everybody's got lives, and it's a rough time to try and ask people for much of anything. So any help is appreciated, even if it's an hour a week. But yeah, if you want to help me, that'd be great. Otherwise, if you want to just show up to the meetings and just give your input, that's cool also. The volunteer
Yeah.
piece is literally like action items. You'll have the ability to pick tasks that we have available, and if it's something you're passionate about or know about, you pick it up and do it. If not, then don't touch it. I'm not
I
here to
like
assign
that.
you tasks. I want you to find stuff that you know about and are passionate about, because it's less work.
Yeah.
If it's something you know how to do and you're passionate about, it takes less work versus me assigning it to you and then you having to figure it out. So
Yeah.
anyway, it is dinner time. So
It is dinner time.
we're gonna
Yeah.
sign off. I thoroughly appreciate you jumping on, especially I think I said it before we went live, but like we have differing opinions on certain things, and as long as you don't want certain people not to live because of those opinions, then I think we can talk and work together. We can
Yeah,
do that.
absolutely. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. And you know what? The things that I've found that we differ on are things that are just me being closed minded, to be honest.
It,
Transgender,
it's
abortion,
refreshing to hear that.
you know,
Uh,
I'm just really closed minded on it. And if I, like you said, if I had more education about it, I might be more open about it. But I don't know stuff about that stuff, you know?
I will I was told about a website recently that helps explain a lot of that in a very simple manner. And it is intended for all ages. It sounds cheesy, but it's called genderbread.org, I think.
Yeah.
So instead of gingerbread, it's genderbread. And that has some resources on it that may be helpful. So check it out. And genderbread.org. Yep. So check
Yeah.
that out. It just gives a quick uh, general populace friendly, like it doesn't go into details or anything else, but it gives you an idea of why those different terms exist and kind of what they represent, and it could be helpful. So check it out.
Okay. I'll check it out. Hey,
Sweet.
Jared, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I look forward to hearing more from you because you seem like a really cool dude. If you ever come up into Gadsden, hit me up. We'll have a
Yeah.
beer together because
I will at some point. I'm hoping that funding gets through and we
Yeah.
can make more in-person trips to places.
Yeah.
It's been picking up. I hate the reason that it did, but the Roe v. Wade decision kind of brought a lot of attention to me,
Yeah.
and I don't like why it's happening, but I will take the attention if we can change the state. So
Yeah.
we'll do what we can.
Hey,
Well,
and that's another thing is like with abortion, it being pushed down to the state level, like make something happen, you know?
yeah, that's well, we got to push the legislature. So I need everybody else
Yeah.
to find people in their area who are running that are not hating people that have uteruses and vote for them. Because as
Yeah.
a governor, I can't do everything. Like I'm not an
Yeah.
authoritarian. I can't. I wouldn't be even if I could. But like their power is not there in that position. So rightfully so. But people need to understand that.
Yeah.
I can't do everything. Uh,
Exactly. No, but you can reach out to people,
oh yeah, no,
and
we can have some
and
influence. Yeah.
encourage them, build the
Well,
influence and encourage them to,
and
you
the
know,
we're
come
having
out of
such
the
a good conversation.
woodworks and
We the one thing we can do, and that's why I'm having the policy meetings, is like I can't just implement the policy, but if
yeah.
we talk about this as a state and say, hey, like we've all like the populace has talked about this, like this is what we want to do, and then we hand that to the legislature and they say no, like then we can then like as governor I can be like, hey guys, guess what? Like you guys said you wanted this and they're not doing it. So like that's up to you at this point. Like
Uh,
I can't do it, but you need to know they do not care.
I've been on that end before, standing at a fair with a little clipboard. Hey, will you sign this for personal choice? I've
Yeah.
been there, you know.
So,
Yeah.
all right, y'all have a good night, TikTok. I will see you later. Everywhere else, I don't think there's somebody still watching because I said we were going to leave like 4 times in a row. So I think they all got off. I will talk to you later, Robert. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll talk to you later, Jared. You have a good night.
Thanks. You too.
Bye.